Alright, now that we got our pivot table in our spreadsheet, we can start to apply some modifications to our report. So in the previous video, when we checked cells, by default, Excel automatically added to the values box, and then summed all the values to get the total amount of cells. Well, the reason why it did that is because Excel knows that the cells column has numeric data. So Excel assumed that we wanted to sum those values. But let's say that we dragged one of our fields in the values box that only included text values. What will Excel do then? Well, let's try it out. Let's uncheck the cells and the product ID, and this time we can drag product ID to the values box. So instead of Excel automatically applying a sum, it applied a count, because we can't sum text values. And up here in our report, it shows that the total count of all the products combined is 99. And if we wanted to see the count for each unique product ID, we can drag the product ID to the rows box as well. So let's do that. Now in our pivot table, we can see the count of each product ID. Now let's change this pivot table back to where we could see the total cells for each product ID. We can remove the product ID out of the values box by just clicking and dragging up. And then to get the cells back in there, we can click cells and drag it to the values. And once again, since the cells column has numeric data in it, Excel automatically applied a sum for our cells. So currently in our report, our cells column has no formatting applied to it. So it's a little bit hard to read these values. But luckily, we can apply number formatting to our report just like how we can format cells within our worksheet. So to do that, we can come down to the sum of cells in our values box, give it a left click, and select Value Field Settings. And in our pop-up window, we can select Number Format. And since we are dealing with money, I'm going to select the currency format. And then we can click OK. OK again. Now in our pivot table, the sum of cells column has the currency format. We also have the option to change what this report does to the cells column. Currently, it's summing all the cells for each product ID. Well, instead of using sum, what if we wanted the average of the cells for each product ID? So to change that, we can left click our sum of cells in our values box, go back to Value Field Settings, and in our pop-up window, we have the choice to sum, count, average, max, min, and so on. So if we wanted to average our cells, we can select Average and click OK. Now our pivot table is averaging the cells for each product ID. I'm going to press Ctrl-Z on my keyboard to undo that action to get back where our pivot table is summing the cells for each product ID. Now let's take a look at our data set. We have this units column that shows how many units were sold for that product ID. So if we wanted to make our report a little bit more detailed, we can include the total units sold for each product. So what we have to do is click anywhere back inside of our pivot table, and then we can select our units and drag it to the values box. Now our pivot table shows the total cells and the total amount of units of each product ID. Well, if we wanted, instead of summing the amount of units for each product, we can show this value as a percentage of the grand total. So if we left click the sum of units in our values box, go to Value Field Settings, and then we can click the Show Values As tab, and then within this dropdown, we have multiple options to choose from. And for our example, we can select percent of grand total. Then click OK. Now our pivot table is showing the percentage of how many units were sold for each product ID. And currently in our pivot table, it is sorting by the product ID alphabetically. But if we wanted to see the largest cells to the smallest cells, we can select our Sum of Cells column, come up to the Data tab, and select the descending sort, which is largest to smallest. Now we can easily see that the product B102 has the highest amount of cells, and product A101 has the lowest. So those were a few options how we can modify our pivot tables. Play around with it, drag different fields to these quadrants down below, and see how your pivot table changes. And in the next video, we will talk about how we can group and filter data within our pivot table.